Seventh grade math test 23, problem number 1. Says Jill poured 4/5 cups of bleach in a bucket and 4 cups of water, and it says how many cups of water are there for each cup of bleach. So each cup of bleach is what they said, so that goes on the bottom, so that means we divide. And 4 divided by 4/5 means 4 times the reciprocal, or 5/4. Cross out your ones and you see there's 5 cups of water for each single cup of bleach. 2 says Mackenzie charges a proportional fee. 4 sessions cost $248. Well, if that's true, and I divide those two, remember money on top, then I get $62 per session. So they give us 2 other fees, and we want to see if they're proportional to Mackenzie's. So for 7.5 sessions, it's $465. So again, money on top means money goes in because it goes in and out when we divide, right? So go ahead and check your division. Go out to the side. Make sure you get what I get. You should have got $62 per session there. And for the next one, feed 2, it was 3 sessions for $186. So I go 186 divided by 3, and I get $62 per session. So they are both proportional to Mackenzie. Number 3 says, which expressions are equivalent to this right here? So what we got to do is simplify this first, and I always distribute and combine like terms when I simplify, right? But there's nothing to distribute because there's no number right in front of the parentheses. So when I combine like terms, I add all my x's. I got 4 positives, 4 more positives, and 3 negatives. Same team add, opposite team subtract. Who has more? Positives have more, so there's 5 positives, and I see that that expression is equivalent to 5x plus 4 simplified. So if I look at the first expression, it's already simplified. It's the same thing, so yes, that's part of my answer. 2, that's already simplified. That's not the same, so don't pick that one. 3, not simplified yet, so I combine like terms. 8x plus 3 more x's means I have a total of 11 x's. That's not the same. And 4, I add my x's here. X plus 4x equals 5x minus 4. Well, that's close, but it's not the same, so my answer is only expression 1 this time. So problem number 4, we have to enter the value for g. So in other words, I need to take this expression and simplify it. I can do the rule for subtraction, which for some reason I forgot to do there. And then I distribute 1.1 there. No, here I did it down here. 1.1 times 2 is 2.2, and 1.1 times negative 2.6 is negative 2 and 82/100. So the question is, what goes here? What goes there? G is negative 2 and 82/100. For problem number 5, we have an inequality, and they ask us to describe the solution. So in order to do that, what would the graph look like? We have to solve it first. So I work farthest away from the variable first. I do inverse operations. 27 plus 9 is 36. Divide both sides by the coefficient, by the number in front of x. I do not reverse inequality because I did not divide by a negative. And if I say my variable first, x is greater than 9. If 9 is less than x, then x is greater than 9. You want to say the letter first, right? So greater than means the answers are all the numbers bigger than that. So all the numbers bigger than 9 are this way, so that should be an open dot, arrow to the right. Number 6 says a spoiled son can spend $2,500 a day on shopping. So the total amount that boy can spend is $2,500. Now that has to be more than or the same as what he spends. Okay, because sometimes it's the other way, right? But this time it should be here. And then it says $700 he already spent on a watch and $400 per hour. So H is going to equal hours. So 700, the H doesn't go there because that was a one-time deal. And then 400 per hour, that's why the H goes there. There's our answer for 6. Number 7 says Jane is drinking 16 ounces. She already drank 6 ounces. What percentage is left? Alright, so I have to figure out how much is left. 16 take away 6 is 10. So this question is saying 10 is what percent of 16. So we do what we've been doing all year, percent proportion. We cross multiply. 10 times 100 is 1,000. Divide by 16. Make sure you go in and out. Do that off to the side. You should get 62.5. And it says you round to the nearest percent, so that's why it's 63%. Number 8 says Cynthia bought some shoes for $40 plus 7% sales tax. So if we figure out the amount of sales tax that she paid, in other words, we find 7% of 40, then we can add that on to 40 to see how much money Cynthia paid. And we're going to have to do that because they ask how much money did Cynthia and Junior pay together. So I take my percent proportion. I find 7% by cross multiplying and dividing. Dividing by 100 just means move the decimal 2 times. So taxes add $2.80 onto that. So $40 plus $2.80 is $42.80. Now Junior spends $30, but there's 7% sales tax, so let's find 7% of what Junior did. Okay, so 7% of what Junior paid. We do the percent proportion again, cross multiply and divide. Remember, dividing by 100, move the decimal 2 times. So his taxes added $2.10 onto his $30, so I add those two. And if I want to see how much they spend together, that means add them. Remember, line up your decimals when you're adding. You should not be using calculators yet, not on this one. And so I line my decimals and I add, and I see together they're spending $74.90 for those things, plus taxes. All right, so number 9, it says a taco vendor sells 5 tacos for $7.50. He raises his prices by 10%. How much is each taco now? Well, what we got to do is find the unit rate, how much per each taco. So remember, it always goes money on top, right? So 750 over 5 means 750 divided by 5. When you do your division, you guys should get 1.5. That means each taco is $1.50. So now we got to find 10% of $1.50. 10% of $1.50, again, we use percent proportion. It goes is over of, percent over 100. Cross multiply. Multiplying by 10 is easy, move the decimal once. Dividing by 10 is easy, move the decimal 2 times. And I see that if it's raised 10%, it's raised 15 cents. So each taco was $1.50. Now we got to add 15 cents. So add those two together, line up your decimals. You should get $1.65 as a new unit rate for each taco. Number 10 says, Jim has 20 3/5 ounces of water. He spills 5 1/5 ounce. How much is left? So when I subtract these two, normally we'd get, right, we turn them both into improper fractions, get a common denominator, and do all that work. But if I see they already have the same denominators, and this fraction, this top fraction, the numerator is greater than the bottom numerator, then I don't need to do all that work. I can just do 3 take away 1 is 2. That's 2/5, and 20 take away 5 is 15. So there's 15 2/5 ounces left. Number 11, we've got to find scale factor. These two are similar figures, which means their corresponding sides are in portion. And to get the scale factor, or how many times bigger or smaller something got, we put the new shape over the old shape. And this is not new just because it's bigger. It's new because the directions say the scale factor applied to A to get B. Okay, because I could switch these around and then the scale factor would be a fraction as opposed to a whole number. Okay, so you got to read the directions. If A is the first one, A is the old one, you got to put that on the bottom. So how do we get scale factor? We take those two radii, we put new over old, and simplify, and this time scale factor is 2. It is possible for the scale factor to be a fraction though, so just keep track of which one's new and which one's old, and make sure you put new over old. 12. We have a scale drawing. The house is 6.1 inches tall, and then there's a scale factor of 1 inch to 5 feet. So it's already 1 inch to every 5 feet. For 6.1 inches, just multiply 6.1 times 5. 13. A circle has a diameter of 10 feet. That means the radius is 5 feet. We need the radius because we have to find area, because we have to compare the areas. So the area for the first circle, if the diameter is 10 and the radius is 5, is pi r squared. Remember to do in your calculator, because now we're allowed to use calculators for this problem, starting on 13. We go 5 times 5 first in your calculator. So go out to the side and practice that. 5 times 5, leave that in your calculator, don't hit clear. Then just hit times 3.14, and you should get 78.5. That's the area of the first circle. The second circle has a diameter of 10, which means the area is, a diameter of 10, which means, sorry about that, a diameter of 20, there we go, which means the radius is 10. So if I'm going to find the area of that, I go area equals pi r squared. Remember to do the radius squared part first. That's just order of operations, right? Multiplying by 100, you don't even need your calculator for this. Just move the decimal 2 times. Now, we're going to take these two, and they say, what's the difference? So we subtract. You can line up the decimals, or since I'm letting you use a calculator, better yet, just hit in your calculator 314 minus 78.5, and you got your answer. Okay, 14 again. We're using calculators on the rest of these problems. All right, so the circle has a circumference of 109 12 centimeters, and we're going to find 3/4 of that area. So what we're going to do then is, since they gave us circumference, we're going to use the formula for circumference to figure out what the radius is, because we need radius to get area. So again, got to find radius first, then you can find area, then you find 3/4 of that. Now I'm going to explain how to do that. First of all, let's get the radius. If they tell us the circumference is 109.12, we put that where the C goes. 2 is always 2 per the formula, and pi is always 3.14 rounded. Now, if I multiply these two, 2 pi is always 6.28. So how do I get radius? I isolate the variable, divide by the coefficient. Just whip out your calculator, make sure you hit this first, then hit division, then hit 6.28, and you should get 17.37 and some change. Now, my hints to you, or when you got a big number like this, because we're going to have to square this, right? If you got a big number, it's okay to round that to the nearest hundredths. So round your radius to the nearest hundredths. So now we can find the area. Area is pi r squared. The r is about 17.38. So in your calculators, you should hit this now. 17.38 times 17.38. That should be in your calculator. Just leave it in there. Don't erase. Don't clear it. Then hit times again 3.14. That's your area for the circle itself. Leave that in your calculator. Don't even delete it out. Because when we're going to find 3/4 of this, that just means 3/4 times. And the way we do 3/4 times in a calculator, unless you have one of those fancy graphing calculators, all you have to do, if this is already in there, you're just going to hit times 3, then divide 4, and that's going to be your answer. And then the direction said round to the nearest whole number when you're done, so that's about 711 centimeters squared is the area rounded. 15 says, find the area of this figure. Well, we got two rectangles, a little rectangle and a big rectangle. Little rectangle, the dimensions are 12 times 5, so the area is 60. Big rectangle, the dimensions are 36 times 6. Look at the diagram, you should see that, and that's 216. All we do is add those two. That's the area. So for 16, we have three shapes. We have two rectangles and a triangle. Now you can break this up differently. I'm going to do it, I'm just going to call the top triangle, look at your diagram, the top triangle is a small one. In other words, 6 times 10, so take a look and see why I'm doing that. 6 times 10 is 60, which means that whole triangle on the bottom is 20 by 8. So the, rectangle on the bottom is 20 by 8. So the 20 by 8 has an area of 160, because I go 20 times 8. And all I have left is that triangle. Triangle, the way we find here is base times height divided by 2. So I got to get the base. Well, all the way across on the bottom is 20. So if I go 6, look at your diagram and see where the 6 and the 8 are. If I add those two together and subtract that from 20, what's left over is that base of that triangle. So the base is 6, the height is 10. 1/2 base times height, or base times height divided by 2 is going to give us 30. I add the areas of those three shapes together and I get the total area of 250 feet squared. 17, we have three shapes again. I'm going to consider that big rectangle on the left, one big one at 13 by 14. Take a look and see what I mean. So 13 by 14, when I multiply those two, I should get 182. Now you have the small rectangle on the right side, right, with the triangle attached to it. Or if you want to get fancy, you can call it a trapezoid, but let's keep it simple. I'm just going to call it a triangle and a rectangle and a triangle. That rectangle is 8 by what? We don't know. But if I look at the side for that rectangle, all the way down is 13. Part way down is 8. What's left over is the height that I need, so that's 5. So to get the area of the small rectangle, you go 8 times 5. So the big rectangle is 182, small rectangle is 40. Now we got to do the little triangle. Now, the triangle, we need the base times height, right? So the base, the way I get the base is all the way across is 26. I subtract all the stuff that's left over, or the 14 by 8. Look at the diagram and see where the 14 and the 8 is. Add those two, subtract it from 26, and you see that the base for the little triangle on the right, bottom right, is 4. The height is the same as this height up here, so 5. So the way I get area for the triangles, base times height divided by 2, or in other words 10, I need to add those two together. And you should get 232 feet squared. 18 said a rectangle has a width of 8 and a perimeter of 40. What's the length? Well, the way I get perimeter is I add all the sides up. I have two lengths, so I can go 2 times L, plus 2 widths, or 2 times W. If they give me the perimeter, that number goes where P goes. If I'm missing the length, I use a variable. And if they give me the width, I put it where the W goes. So I multiply first before I try to isolate. And then I divide by 2 to find the length is 12 units. 19. A rectangular prism has a width of 10 and a length of 7. If the height is 3 times the length, what's the volume? Well, what I got to do first is, let's see here, in the right spot. Okay, so for 19, so what I got to do, they say where am I at here? Rectangle has a prism, has a width of 10 units and a length of 7 units. Oh, I need to find the height. Okay, so the height is 3 times the length. They gave me the length of 7. 3 times means times 3, so I found the height is 21. So the width they gave me is 10, the length is 7, the height is 21. I get volume by multiplying those two together. We're using calculators now, so I hope that's easy. 1,470 units cubed is the volume. 20, we have a box. They give us the dimensions. Then they give us a second box. They tell us the height's the same, but the width is 5 more units. So I got to take this width and add 5 to get 17. The length is also 5 more, so I take this length and add 5 to get 15. So now my new dimensions are 8 by 17 by 15 for the second box. They want the volume for the second box, so I just multiply those three dimensions, and I get 2,040 centimeters cubed. And that's it. Hope that helped.